Anita, if you could just start off and give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and your journey.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. Yes, I am a pharmacist by training, and I have been in healthcare for over 20 years now. I started in community pharmacy and then did my clinical practice in large healthcare systems, and then later on moved to biotech and pharma. I would say every transition in my career has been very exciting, and it's been driven by my two passions, which is combining science and technology to improve global healthcare outcomes. So in my last role, I was able to really fully combine the two as the scientific communications infrastructure lead at BioMarin. So I focus on operations and technology implementation for scientific content development. Currently, I'm going through a little bit of a spin-off in my career right now, so it's been very exciting. I am a board member for AWIS and the president for the Palo Alto chapter, which the organization itself is a 50-year legacy empowering women in STEM. We have 30 plus grassroots chapters and over 100,000 members nationally. I also consult health tech startups in my discretionary time, drawing on my extensive healthcare background. And so thank you, HITLAB, thank you, John, thank you, Stan. I'm excited to be here today to share some insight on this very exciting topic from a scientific communications and medical affairs perspective.
No, that's super. And again, for the audience watching this, the people all over the world, please be sure to link in with Anita. Her LinkedIn link is actually in the chat box for all of those on Zoom. And for those watching on YouTube or other platforms, just jump over and take a look at just Google Anita she'll be online with the Association of Women in Science. So Anita, this topic is obviously focused on data-driven decision-making. Tell us a little bit about how that framework has factored into your career and where it's really come in most handy.
Yeah, I would say this has been very, significant and through my whole entire career, in pharma and healthcare sectors to really drive decision-making. So when I was practicing as a clinical pharmacist, I made medication therapy recommendations using evidence-based medicine. So really it's a practice of individual patient care by using extensive research, right, found in randomized trial, metadata, meta-analysis, systematic reviews to optimize clinical decision-making. So it really allows a clinical pharmacist to answer clinical questions with accuracy, extending, the role of beyond just dispensing medications as a pharmacist. It also really allowed me to analyze physician orders to make sure that the patient is receiving the right medicine in the right dose for the right diagnosis at the right time, and also at the lowest possible cost suitable. So again, the whole concept of using evidence-based medicine is that a clinical pharmacist can recommend therapeutic changes, optimize antibiotic choices or adjusting doses, and it can help with detecting drug-drug interactions, adverse drug events, and preventing polypharmacy and promoting medication compliance. Now, switching gears, moving into pharma setting, I use data to make informed decisions on operational efficiency, workforce optimization, financial decision-making, strategic planning, innovation and technology adoption, performance monitoring, change management, optimizing scientific content development, and a whole lot more. So data is very important.
Anita, this is John Hammitt. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, John.
How are you? I've been lurking here in the background because my camera has been having an argument with the browser, and the browser won, and the camera is now laying flat on its back, black. So,
well, you did great as Stan.
So thanks for that very good perspective. I'm curious about how data accuracy and integrity and dashboards kind of come into playing the role you've just described, because in the world in which there are so many therapeutic choices and so many ways of trying to determine useful outcomes from therapies, it almost cries out for an assurance that the data is accurate and highly credible, and more importantly, you've got a dashboard that gives you quick access to it.
Yes, that's a good question. I'll share the perspective of your question from actually a scientific communication and medical perspective, because the data that I will be referring to is actually publication content. that I actually use in order to make dashboards when I was at BioMarin. So again, everybody keeps saying data is just as good at what goes in, right? To ensure accuracy and integrity, it really starts with high quality data. So how do you get high quality data? So when I was working at BioMarin, the data that we collected actually comes from our various different publication management softwares that we use for development and management. So standard process and training were actually put in place to ensure that the right information is collected and, most importantly, entered correctly in order to help with the integrity and lessen the cleanup process. So once it's collected, so quality assessments and cleanup must be done to decide what actually goes into the dashboards, and that's based on the business objectives that we actually define before creating the dashboards itself. In order to protect the security of the data, we also have to decide who should have access to the data bank and who from the IT governance folks that we have to work with in order to be compliant with using the data and putting it into different places, et cetera. So each dashboard itself is very unique because it really depends on who the audience is and what type of information there is that we're going to be putting in there, whether it be published or unpublished data. So we have to consider copyright rules that are involved, external versus internal audience. We have to consider what type of access and what type of level of viewing and what type of information that they're allowed to actually see. And then lastly, we use ongoing training processes to ensure that most accurate and up-to-date information continues to feed into the data bank so that we can actually present in the dashboard the most accurate information. So we do also employ quarterly reviews of the data bank to make sure that there is actually no breaks or data is feeding into the dashboard correctly. And I would say, lastly, maintaining good documentation throughout the whole entire building implementation process is something to really keep in mind to maintain the trust in the information that you actually display for visual decision making.
So that was an extraordinarily good word picture of how this all works, and so thanks for that. But one of the things I'm curious about as we kind of run down to the end of the time frame here, what kind of challenges or obstacles have you faced? And I'm wondering specifically about maybe the cultural ones. We live in a world where we're not all the same. I grew up as an engineer. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But over time, you learn also that intuition is an important part of decision making. And so when you're putting those kinds of rigorous rules and processes in place, how do you overcome the challenge of kind of personal biases and cultural perspectives?
Yes, there is a lot that went into it. So obstacles faced are actually very common. Again, when you think that you have all the data in the world, you wouldn't actually think that it would be that hard to transform them into actionable visuals for decision making. However, it is quite quite a process in order to, speak to all the stakeholders and making sure that everything is in all the right places. So access actually at the very beginning, to gain access to the actual data that is in the data bank, it was very, very, very difficult. So we had to navigate through security and compliance, work with our internal IT folks to be able to really just get they don't want everybody in there to get the information and things like that. So that was very time consuming, but worthwhile to actually venture down that journey. Then later on, you have to identify the right teams to manage this access, and then also address all the restricted issues if there were missing data or restricted data, and then also encounter different obstacles into securing the access after it actually leaves the database and how you're actually going to use it into your dashboards to make meaningful use out of it. So all of that, after that access to data has been identified, we realize that there's really no then we realize that there is no single source of data. So then we have to identify other places where we can actually find the data to supplement what we needed in order to meet the business objectives. So lots of devising of strategies and lots of meetings, making sure that everybody that should be involved is involved, and no arching of putting more people in there that didn't need to actually see the data to have access to it, and then putting all the different restrictions to make sure that we protect it, secure it, and then also, ensure that validation and cleansing of that is all done. So at the very end, really, to overcome it, you have to be making sure when you're actually implementing is to find the right internal IT governance group that is going to be helping you. And if you're going to be working with a vendor, you have to be able to identify the person that is on the vendor side that will be able to give you the right information to overcome some of those challenges. So, and after all of those things are all worked out, you'll be able to significantly streamline the process and achieve the data that you need to meet the business objectives that you're trying to, obtain.
Well, thanks. That's a great cheat sheet for how do you find your way through the woods with all of the distractions and threats of getting to the goal. We're going to have to wrap up and pass it back to Stan, but I'd like to end on first saying thanks for what you're doing in AWIS and specifically ensuring full participation women in STEM, because that's an important agenda. And thanks for finding the time and the energy to do that. And secondly, I understand you're an advisor at Stanford Medical Catalyst, which has got a focus on pediatric medicine among a number of different players. And that's also a very important agenda. So thank you for being energetic enough and have enough time to put your energy not only into the work, but more importantly, these additional agendas that are making a difference for all of us.
Of course. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, John.